communist infiltration, communist indoctrination, communist subversion, and the international communist conspiracy to sap and impurify all of our precious bodily fluids.
Are you coming to the tree where they strung up a man, the same murder three? Strange things that happen here, how stranger would it be if we met at midnight in the hanging tree?
Welcome to Strange Things, broadcasting from the Raimundo Rios Mayo Library in Arkansas. And welcome to the show. I'm your host, Chris James. This is March 11th, 2017, Season 2, Episode number 10. Tonight, we're going to be talking about pirates. My wife and I were waiting at her doctor's office, and the TV was showing Pirates of the Caribbean, Part 6 or maybe 10 or some such. I've seen maybe 1.5. I was struck by the thought that a lot of people today are getting their history from Hollywood. After saying something about how pirates must have smelled really bad back then, my wife said, "Why not do a show on pirates?" So, here it is. How is it so many pirates were able to run around the world and capture so many ships? Maybe it had something to do with the living conditions of the sailors that they were attacking. Picture this. There you are, a young man in the 15 or 1600s. You're passing through some small town, and you decide to stop and have a drink. Just one. You sip your somewhat odd-tasting drink, and suddenly the room begins to spin. You feel odd, as if the room is growing dim. You feel yourself drifting down towards the floor. When you awake, you're in the hold of a ship, way out at sea, and the folks around you have little to no sympathy for your newfound predicament. The first officer informs you have a choice. Either you work as a sailor and do everything you're told, or you swim back to shore. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to make the right decision. What the heck, you think? You just might enjoy your little adventure. Well, the food is nothing to get excited about, and you'll be having the same thing for the next few months. You work as long as the guy in charge wants you to work, and then you get to crawl into a nice hard berth where you sleep until someone wakes you to go back to work. At some point in your trip, you tear your pants on a nail. Great. Now you can run around with your backside showing, or you can go to what was lovingly known as the people's trunk. Talk about false advertising. You get a pair of $20 pants for the low price of $80. But you don't know that's what you're being charged because it gets taken out of your pay at the end of the trip. When you finally set foot on land, it's in some foreign port where you don't speak the language. You might consider running away, but the authorities are getting a few bucks on the side to watch for runaway sailors. So you drink until you no longer care, and then you return to the only home you have, the ship. Day in and day out, this is your life. Then one day, you spot a ship on the horizon. It's showing a flag from your home country. You've been looking at the same 20 or 30 faces for the several months now. You've memorized the ship from stem to stern. You're dying for something new to take your mind off the horrible life you now call your own. The ship pulls alongside. It looks like any other ship you've seen out here. The crew are in the same sad shape as you, but as they get close, someone yells, "Avast there," which means stop. That's when the flag at the stern of the ship is pulled down, and it's replaced by a black flag with the skull and crossbones of the pirates. Maybe it's a devil stabbing a heart with a spear. Whichever, it's black, and no country on earth has a black flag. Your captain yells for the crew to defend the ship. Your captain is the same sorry person who kidnapped you in the first place. He's also the one who docked your pay for just about any little thing he didn't like. So, do you grab a sword and do battle? Or do you stand there and watch as the pirates board the ship and kill the captain and all of his officers? Never much like the captain anyway. These pirates don't look any worse or better than the men you've worked and lived with. Then their captain comes to you and he offers you a deal. Join the pirates as a full member, which will entitle you to share in any and all booty stolen. Or you can join the captain and his officers, now feeding the fish. Once more, it doesn't take a brain surgeon to make the right decision. As a sailor on board your first ship, you had to do as you were told, period. Now you have a say in just about everything the crew is going to do. Believe it or not, most pirates ran their ships on a democracy. You got to vote on how the ship was run, when and where you went, and should you find the life of a pirate not to your liking, you could quit after a time and be dropped off at a safe port, someplace where the authorities weren't likely to be hanging out. There were some ports that accommodated the pirates, seeing as they had a lot of loose gold and silver needing spending, and the alternative was usually get your town burnt down. As a sailor, you were lucky to receive enough cash at the end of the trip to get drunk 1 or 2 times, and that was it. As a pirate, you are now getting a cut of any loot found on board all the ships you attack. Is it dangerous? Yes, but so was sailing on any vessels at that time. The biggest and most profound incentive was the fact that you were no longer a slave to the master of the ship. You were about as free as a man could be. Now, if you get caught, the authorities will hang you. Nothing like what you see in the movies. There's no scaffold drop. The rope is placed around your neck, and you're hoisted off the ground to choke to death. Sometimes this might take 20 minutes. Once you've stopped kicking, your body was transferred to a gibbet. This is a nice iron cage shaped like a body. The gibbet was hung from a crossbeam, usually out on a pier, so passing ships could see what became of pirates when they were caught. Your body would slowly rot, but the cage was there to hold things together. If the French caught you, they would use what's called a garrote. This is a metal or leather band that was wrapped around your neck. And then a crank was turned and the band would slowly tighten until you couldn't breathe. And then you could sit there and contemplate the errors of your ways. Yep, the life of a pirate had its drawbacks, but so did just about any course you chose to follow. But as a pirate, you just might retire with a sizable stash of gold and silver. Now, Francis Drake is a name some folks will recognize from history, but did you know he was known by Queen Elizabeth I as her pirate? He was one of the Sea Dog privateers licensed by the English government to attack Spanish shipping. Any military ship was easily identified long before closing with a ship at sea. From the deck, you could spot a ship at about 4 miles. From the crow's nest, you had a range of about 15 miles. The design of the sails, as well as the number of masts, would give away any Navy ship trying to approach an enemy vessel. It didn't take long to figure out by using civilian ships With flags from neutral countries, you could pull up alongside the enemy ship and board them, usually without firing a shot. You see, the idea was to capture the ship so you could use it and all of its cargo. Sinking a ship didn't put money in your pocket. These operations became known as false flag operations. We'll be right back after a few commercials, so don't go away. You're listening to Arkanasa Radio. Do you have skin? Would you like to take better care of it? Call Lourdes James, independent beauty consultant, and set up an appointment. Call 723-3019. If your vision isn't what it used to be, and you're not sure you're seeing Bigfoot or just your neighbor mowing his lawn, stop on by Del Norte Optical, 107 Calle del Norte, just across the street from the Embassy Suites. You should be able to see what you're looking at. Looking for a great cup of coffee? Swing on by the Organic Man Coffee Truck, 1002 Eaterby Day, suite number 7. Not a coffee drinker? They have hot chocolate, hot tea, and sometimes muffins and cookies. It's a great place to meet your friends for a conversation or curl up in the corner with a good book. The Organic Man Coffee Truck. Life is too short to drink bad coffee.
No, don't say goodbye. Stay with us. This is Arkanasa Radio. Quédate con nosotros. Estás escuchando Arkanasa Radio.
You're listening to Strange Things with Chris James. And welcome back. A moment ago we were talking about what was known as a false flag operation. Now the law of the sea says you could sail under any flag you chose, as long as no hostilities are taken. Before any hostile action, you must show your true colors. Now a privateer was a legal pirate. A king or a queen, or one of their representatives, such as a governor, would authorize a ship's captain to use whatever means he deemed necessary to capture or sink enemy vessels. The captain would be issued a certificate or a letter of marque, a pirating license, if you will, showing he was acting under the authority of some country's leader. In the days of fighting using sailing ships, a letter of marque or reprisal was a government license authorizing a person known as a privateer to attack and capture enemy vessels and bring them before the Admiralty's court for condemnation and sale. A portion of all spoils obtained by the privateers was given to the sovereign or the issuing governor or ambassador. Some of the most famous pirates started out as privateers. Now Drake sailed on his most famous voyage from 1577 to 1580, becoming the first English captain to circumnavigate the globe. On that trip, he lost 4 of his 5 ships. 2 were lost to an Atlantic storm. 1 was found to be rotten below decks, hadn't been built correctly, and they simply burned it when they were in port in the New World. The 4th ship went down while rounding from the Atlantic to the Pacific. He also managed to acquire a few ships to replace the ones that he had lost. At some point in his sails, he executed a subordinate for plotting a mutiny. Drake raided various Spanish ports, and he captured several Spanish vessels loaded with treasure. Near Lima, Drake captured a Spanish ship laden with 25,000 pesos of Peruvian gold, amounting to about 7 million pounds by today's standards. That's about $8 million in U.S. Drake also discovered news of another ship, Nuestra Señora de la Concepcion, which was sailing west towards Manila, Philippines. It would come to be called the Cacafuego. Yes, you heard right, the Cacafuego. I was taken aback by this name, and I tried to find out why anyone would call their ship this. It wasn't Drake's crew who called the ship by this less-than-proper name. It was the crew of the Nuestra Señora who used the name. Drake gave chase and eventually captured the treasure ship, which proved his most profitable capture. Aboard Nuestra Señora de la Concepcion, Drake found 80 pounds of gold, several gold crucifixes, jewels, 13 chests full of royale, these were Spanish doubloons, and 26 tons of silver. Drake was naturally quite pleased at his good luck in capturing the galleon, and he showed it by dining with the captain, the ship's officers, gentlemen passengers. He then offloaded the captives a short time later, and he gave each one a small gift of appreciation in accordance to their rank, as well as a letter of safe conduct. Upon returning to England, Queen Elizabeth was immediately knighted him, Sir Francis. 8 years later, Drake was instrumental in defeating the Spanish Armada. Pirates and parrots. What was the attraction? A parrot will just naturally hunt down and kill rats, as if driven by some unknown passion. Pirates soon found that by having a parrot or two on board, it would help control the rat population. That's why you'll often see pirates pictured with parrots. Henry Morgan was born sometime around 1635 in Wales. At some time in the early 1660s, Morgan was active with a group of privateers led by Sir Christopher Mings, attacking Spanish cities and settlements in the Caribbean and Central America. In 1663, Morgan captained a ship that became part of Ming's fleet. He also took part in the attack on Santiago de Cuba and the sacking of Campeche in Yucatan Peninsula. Henry Morgan once ordered his men to lock the inhabitants of Puerto Principe, Cuba, not to be mistaken for Port-au-Prince, Haiti, inside a church so that they could plunder the town unhindered. About 1,500 privateers used Jamaica as a base for their activity and brought significant revenue to the island. As a planting community of 5,000, this was still new and developing, and revenue from the pirates was needed to avoid economic collapse. A privateer's ship would enter port loaded with riches, which were soon spent in town. This would give the economy a big boost. After Puerto Principe, one of the English privateers got in an argument with one of his French shipmates and stabbed the man. Before a riot between the French and English sailors could begin, Morgan arrested the English sailor, and he promised the French sailors that the man would be hanged on his return to Port Royal. Captain Morgan was true to his word, and the English sailor was hanged. After dividing the spoils of the conquest of Puerto Principe, Morgan announced a plan to attack Portobello, which is now known as Panama. The city was the third largest and the strongest on the Spanish Main, and on one of the main routes of trade between the Spanish territories and Spain. Because of the value of the goods passing through its port, Portobello was protected by 2 castles in the harbor and another one in town. The 200 French privateers, unhappy with the division of the treasure and the murder of their countrymen, had left Morgan's service, and they all returned to Tortuga. On 11th July, 1668, Morgan anchored a short distance from Portobello, and he transferred his men to 23 rowboats. They paddled to within 3 miles of their target. Landing, they approached the first castle from the landward side. These castles were designed to protect from the sea, but they had few defenses on the land side. Arriving half an hour before dawn, they took the 3 castles and the town with hardly a struggle. The privateers lost 18 men, with about 32 wounded. The action at Portobello displayed a clever cunning and an expert timing, which was to become an earmark for Morgan's brilliance as a military commander. Over the next few years, other brutal raids followed against 2 towns in Venezuela and Panama City. Any town under Spanish rule was considered fair game. Morgan and his men arrived at Old Panama City on January 27, 1671. They camped overnight before attacking the following day. The Spanish had 1,200 infantry and 400 cavalry. However, most of them were inexperienced. Morgan sent 300 men down a ravine that led to a foot of a small hill on the Spanish right flank. As they disappeared from view, the Spanish front line, thinking that the privateers were in full retreat, broke ranks and they gave chase. The Spanish soldiers were met with organized fire from Morgan's main force of troops. In an effort to disrupt Morgan's forces, the governor of Panama released 2 herds of oxen and bull onto the battlefield. Well, the sound of gunfire caused the animals to turn and stampede back the way they had come. Their keepers and some of the remaining Spanish troops were trampled to death. The battle was soon over, with the Spanish losing somewhere between 400 and 500 men. Morgan had lost 15 privateers. Panama's governor had sworn to burn the town down if his troops lost to the privateers, and he had placed barrels of gunpowder around the largely wooden buildings. These were detonated by the captain of the artillery after Morgan's victory, and the resulting fire lasted until the following day. Only a few stone buildings remained standing afterwards. Much of Panama's wealth was destroyed in the conflagration, although some had been removed by ship before the privateers arrived. The privateers spent the next 3 weeks in Panama and plundered what they could from the ruins. Now, during Morgan's absence from from Jamaica, news had reached the island that England and Spain had signed the Treaty of Madrid. The pact aimed to establish peace in the Caribbean between the 2 countries. It included an agreement to revoke all letters of marque and similar commissions. Now, back then, news traveled as fast as a sailing ship, so Morgan and the other privateers didn't get the word for quite a while. So they had continued with business as usual up until the first ship arrived and spread the word. Spain was very upset that Panama had been destroyed shortly after the treaty was signed. Soon, word of a war began to fill the air, so to appease the Spanish, Morgan was briefly arrested in 1672. He was transported to England, but he was treated more as a conquering hero than as a criminal. See, his arrest was a PR campaign. Soon, Morgan was released from his detention, never having even seen the inside of a cell. He was awarded the lieutenant governorship of Jamaica and returned to his former home. Although Morgan had been ordered to eradicate piracy from Jamaican waters, he continued his friendly relations with many of the privateer captains and even went so far as to invest in some of their ships. There were around 1,200 privateers operating in the Caribbean, and Port Royal was their preferred port for rest and recuperation, as well as offloading their spoils. Morgan received a cut from the privateers. We'd call that a bribe today. See, politicians were just as crooked then as they are today. Morgan was ordered to no longer issue letters of marque to privateer captains. So, to get around this, his brother-in-law, Robert Bindloss, would send the privateers to the French governor of Tortuga to have a letter issued there. Bindloss and Morgan would receive a commission for each one signed. In early 1678, the king and the Privy Council recalled the governor from Jamaica, leaving Morgan as the governor for 3 months. A Privy Council. Now, what the heck is a Privy Council? Well, the privy is also known as the bathroom. It's the private room, privy, bathroom. And you know what a council is. It's a bunch of guys who stand around and give you ideas. So, picture it. The king is sitting on the toilet, and a bunch of advisors are standing around talking to him, and they're making decisions while he goes. It's good to be the king. By late 1670, France began to threaten British interests in the Caribbean, and Morgan took control of the defenses of Port Royal. He declared martial law in 1678. This was during his time as the temporary governor of the island. Because of the threat of invasion, he rebuilt the fortifications surrounding the town and increased the number of cannon from 60 to more than 100 in the 5 years leading up to 1680, when Morgan died, the 25th of August, 1688. Albemarle, the governor of Jamaica, ordered a state funeral. They laid Morgan's body at King's House for the public to come by and pay respects. Captain Morgan is still considered quite a heroic figure in and around Jamaica. And Captain Kidd was a stylish Scotsman who had been a leading citizen of New York City. He was actively involved in the building of the Trinity Church. The captain was originally commissioned in 1696 to hunt down pirates. He was sent to the Indian Ocean to ply his trade, but it didn't take too long for the lure of easy treasure to get the best of him. He was appointed as a privateer, but shortly thereafter his crew elected him as the master pirate. See, pirates were democratic when it came to their work. Whoever was the brightest and could deliver the biggest treasure was considered to be a good choice as captain. Sounds as if his men were more interested in stealing gold and silver rather than eradicating pirates. We're going to take a brief pause here and play a few commercials, so don't go away. We'll be right back. You're listening to Arkanasa Radio. Do you have skin? Would you like to take better care of it? Call Lourdes James, independent beauty consultant, and set up an appointment. Call 723-3019. If your vision isn't what it used to be, and you're not sure you're seeing Bigfoot or just your neighbor mowing his lawn, stop on by Del Norte Optical, 107 Calle del Norte, just across the street from the Embassy Suites. You should be able to see what you're looking at. Looking for a great cup of coffee? Swing on by the Organic Man Coffee Truck, 1002 Iturbide, suite number 7. Not a coffee drinker? They have hot chocolate, hot tea, and sometimes muffins and cookies. It's a great place to meet your friends for a conversation or curl up in the corner with a good book. The Organic Man Coffee Truck. Life is too short to drink bad coffee.
No, don't say goodbye. Stay with us. This is Arcanelza Radio. Quédate con nosotros. Estás escuchando Arcanelza Radio.
You're listening to Strange Things with Chris James. And welcome back to the show. We were just talking about Captain Kidd. And Captain Kidd was fairly successful, capturing a number of ships. But then, when he attacked a ship belonging to the East India Company, things kind of went downhill. The ship looked like a Spanish galleon, and it carried papers from Spanish authority allowing it to work the Indian Ocean. This should have made it legal prize. Kidd became worried because of the East India Company had a massive power in England, so he buried a lot of his treasure on Gardiner's Island in hopes of using it to bargain his way out of trouble. It was because of Captain Kidd that people today think pirates buried treasure. He was the first to do so, and he may have been the only one. However, his plan didn't work. The papers saying that the ship was working for Spain mysteriously disappeared during his trial. Both him and his wife were arrested and shipped back to England. Kidd was found guilty and sentenced to hang. The first time the executioners tried to hang Kidd, the rope broke. So they got a new rope, and they tried it again. The second rope broke as well. Well, the third hanging was a success, and Kidd's body was coated in tar, and he was hung in a gibbet at the entrance to the harbor. Those papers that would have won Captain Kidd's case reemerged just in the last few years. Ever wonder why so many pirates are pictured with a patch over one eye? No, they didn't all lose an eye in battle. Standing on the deck all day, your eyes would become accustomed to the bright sunlight. As you attacked a ship and chased the crew below deck, you had to pursue them. Stepping into the darkness below, it would take a few minutes for your night vision to kick in. Time for the enemy to take you out. So pirates would cover one eye with a patch shortly before battle. Then, as they stormed the below decks to deal with the crew, they would remove the patch, and they would have good vision in the dark. B-52 bomber pilots were trained to close one eye or to cover it with a black lens just before dropping their nuclear bombs. The flash might blind them, and this would have made flying difficult. Bartholomew Roberts was born 1682 in Wales also. He began his career as a British naval officer. When his ship was attacked by a pirate, Howell Davis, Roberts was captured. When Davis found out Roberts was an expert navigator, he convinced Roberts to switch sides. After a while, Roberts became a much-admired pirate. His men nearly idolized him, saying he was pistol-proof after surviving so many battles. Soon, Roberts took on the moniker of Black Bart. During his career, Black Bart attacked and plundered over 400 ships. His reputation excelled in the eyes of his men, and his infamy grew amongst the authorities, who began to hunt him. He was known for his courage and cunning in battle. He used captured guns to enhance his ship, giving him an advantage when attacking just about every ship at sea. His luck ran out in 1722. Black Bart took on Captain Chaloner Ogley, a British naval officer. The battle was fierce, but the British won after a protracted fight. Everyone, from pirates to the Royal Navy crew, were stunned, and some were quite saddened when Black Bart was finally killed. He had been both feared and admired by both sides of the conflict. In one of the Pirates of the Caribbean movie, much is made of the Pirate's Code. Elizabeth is about to be taken prisoner. She asks for a parley with the pirate captain, invoking the Code of the Brethren, set down by the pirates Morgan and Bartholomew. Just more Hollywood fiction, right? Well, Sir Henry Morgan, a.k.a. Captain Morgan, and Bartholomew Roberts, a.k.a. Black Bart, were actual members of a loose confederation of buccaneers called the Brethren of the Coast, which was headquartered on the island of Tortuga in the 1600s. So the code did exist as an historical fact, and similar to the movie, it involved issues of fairness amongst pirates. No prey, no pay. If you don't attack a ship and plunder its treasure, you don't get any of the loot. Anyone, and they really meant anyone, willing to wade into the fray was awarded an equal share of the plunder. So perhaps there was some honor amongst thieves. Henry Avery was born around 1658 or 1659. He began his naval career in the British Royal Navy. He served on many British ships before he left the Navy to pursue a career as a private merchant mariner. Avery joined a venture known as the Spanish Expedition Shipping in 1693. Now, when a mutiny occurred on board his ship, Avery was suddenly elected pirate captain. Apparently he was involved in the mutiny and possibly its leader. Soon, Avery became one of the most feared and renowned pirates on the Red Sea. Though he didn't take many ships, the two that he did capture were among the finest in the Indian Ocean. One of the ships was the India's treasure ship, bulging with gold and jewelry. Avery took his treasure and his ships and headed to the Caribbean to avoid the wrath of the Indian Grand Mogul. Avery became known as the Arch Pirate, or the King of the Pirates. He had become one of the wealthiest pirates in the world. What really makes him such a heroic figure amongst pirates is that he was never killed in battle, nor was he ever taken prisoner. He has simply vanished from history, taking his treasure with him. Historians believe he may have died of old age, living somewhere in Britain. Now, walking the plank, it looks good in the movies, but it never happened. The pirates were intent on torturing or stabbing their victims to death, or marooning them on an island if for some reason they didn't want to kill them. The idea of walking the plank was first found in the novel Treasure Island by Robert Louis Stevenson. Mention pirates, and most people think of Blackbeard. He was, and is, the most famous pirate, even though he was neither the most prolific nor the longest lived. Born in Bristol, England, around 1680, his name was Edward Teach. Historians believe Teach sailed to Jamaica on board one of the privateers during what is known as Queen Anne's War. This would explain the name of one of his ships, the Queen Anne's Revenge. Teach was recorded as being on the Bahamian islands of New Providence, which was a base for Captain Benjamin Hornigold, whose crew Teach had joined sometime around 1716. Hornigold placed Teach in command of a sloop he had captured, and the two engaged in numerous acts of piracy. Their numbers were boosted by the addition to their fleet of two more ships, one of which was commanded by Stede Bonnet. But towards the end of 1717, Hornigold retired from piracy, taking two of the vessels with him. Teach captured a French merchant vessel, which he renamed Queen Anne's Revenge, and equipped her with 40 guns. On land, they're called cannon, but on a ship, they're called guns. Teach became a renowned pirate. His nickname was derived from his thick black beard and his fearsome appearance. Just before battle, Blackbeard would tie lit cannon fuses in his beard and in the corners of his hat. This would fill the air around his face with smoke, which tended to unnerve just about everyone he came in contact with. Blackbeard was a master of psychological warfare. He was so feared that sometimes all he had to do was hoist his flag, that's the skeleton stabbing a heart with a spear, and his prey would drop sail and beg for mercy. By May 1718, Teach had given himself the rank of Commodore, and was at the height of his power. Late that month, Blackbeard sailed his flotilla to South Carolina, where they blockaded the port of Charlestown. All ships entering or leaving the port were stopped, boarded, and any valuables were confiscated. The ships and the crews were held for ransom. Over the next 5 or 6 days, about 9 vessels were stopped and ransacked. One ship, the Crowley, was headed for London with a group of prominent Charlestown citizens, which included Samuel Wragg, a prominent member of the city council. The passengers were questioned about vessels still in port, and then everybody got locked below decks for the day. Teach informed the prisoners that his fleet required medical supplies from the colonial government of South Carolina, and if that none were forthcoming, all the prisoners would be executed, and their heads would be sent to the governor. All captured ships would be burnt and sunk in the entrance to the harbor, blocking it from further use. I wonder what malady the pirates were suffering from that required medical treatment. One possibility was syphilis, which caused the patients to go mad. Very common amongst sailors at that time. It was treated with mercury, which also caused the patients to go mad. 3 days later, a messenger sent from shore returned to the fleet. They told Blackbeard that their boat had capsized before reaching Charlestown. Teach granted a reprieve of 2 more days, but still the party didn't return. He then called for a meeting of his fellow sailors, and they began moving their ships into the harbor, which caused quite a panic in town. Finally, the townspeople returned to the fleet, and they explained what had happened. Upon arrival, he had presented the pirates' demands to the governor, and the drugs had been quickly gathered. But the 2 pirates sent to escort him had proved difficult to find. They had been busy drinking with friends, and they were finally found thoroughly drunk. Teach kept his side of the bargain, and he released all the captured ships and his prisoners. They had relieved them of their valuables, including most of their clothing. News spread that Blackbeard and another pirate were holding a party in one of the coves. This tended to make folks nervous, since it usually meant the pirates were about to strike in a very big way. The governor was in a bind, so he sent Captain Maynard with 2 ships to deal with Blackbeard. Maynard took command of the 2 armed sloops on November 17th. He was given 57 men. Maynard took the larger of the 2 vessels, which he named Jane. The rest took the Ranger, commanded by one of Maynard's officers, a Mr. Hyde. No, there was no Dr. Jekyll. Men were sent into town along the coast looking for information as to where Blackbeard might be. A few days' worth of searching finally located Blackbeard and one of his ships, which was anchored off Ocracoke Island. Maynard moved his ships to the mouth of the inlet and went about stopping any ships or boats trying to pass. The officer didn't want word to reach Blackbeard of the impending trap. Blackbeard was having a party, as reported earlier. He had sent some of his men ashore and had only kept 24 on board his ship, his new ship, the Adventure. To make matters worse, there was no one on lookout duty all night. At daybreak, preceded by a small boat which was taking soundings, Maynard's 2 sloops entered the channel. The soundings were how you found out how deep the channel was. This would have been a very bad time to run aground. Someone on the Adventure sobered up just soon enough to spot the attacking vessels. They cut the anchors and tried to run for it, but they wound up grounding on a sandbar. The men staggered onto deck, and they got busy firing at the advancing 2 ships. Once the 3 ships were close enough, grappling hooks were thrown, and men began to swing on to the deck of the Jane. Blackbeard wanted to confiscate the ship and abandon the Adventure, which was stuck on the sandbar, and then use the Jane for his getaway. What he didn't know was most of Maynard's men were hidden below decks, waiting for their order to charge. Once the pirates were on board, the men came from the hold and hand-to-hand fighting was in full swing, kind of like what you'd see in the movies. Blackbeard tried to shoot Maynard with several of his pistols. He was known to carry as many as 8. Maynard tried to shoot Blackbeard. As their pistols were being used up, the 2 began swinging their swords and trying to best each other. Now, not like in the movies, as Blackbeard was busy keeping an eye on Maynard, one of the British crewmen stabbed the pirate. This gave Maynard a chance to strike a blow as well. Once Blackbeard was down on the deck, it seemed just about everyone in the crew stabbed or shot him. His body had 5 bullet wounds and 20 stab wounds. Everybody wanted to be able to say they had bested Blackbeard. Blackbeard's head was cut off, and his body was thrown overboard. Now it is said that the body swam twice around the Jane before sinking from sight. The head was taken to the governor so the crew could collect the reward. Blackbeard was a pirate for only about 2 years, yet he is by far the most popular and famous pirate to ever sail. We'll be right back after these messages, so don't go away. You're listening to Arkanasa Radio. Do you have skin? Would you like to take better care of it? Call Lourdes James, independent beauty consultant, and set up an appointment. Call 723-3019. If your vision isn't what it used to be, and you're not sure you're seeing Bigfoot or just your neighbor mowing his lawn, stop on by Del Norte Optical, 107 Calle del Norte, just across the street from the Embassy Suites. You should be able to see what you're looking at. Looking for a great cup of coffee? Swing on by the Organic Man Coffee Truck, 1002 Eaterby Day, suite number 7. Not a coffee drinker? They have hot chocolate, hot tea, and sometimes muffins and cookies. It's a great place to meet your friends for a conversation or curl up in the corner with a good book. The Organic Man Coffee Trike. Life is too short to drink bad coffee.
No, don't say goodbye. Stay with us. This is Arcanelza Radio. Quédate con nosotros. Estás escuchando Arcanelza Radio.
You're listening to Strange Things with Chris James. And welcome back to the show. John Rackham, better known as Calico Jack, had received a pardon for previous piracy in 1719. Nonetheless, he headed back out to sea the following year after seizing a 12-gun sloop from Nassau Harbor in the Bahamas. Among Rackham's dozen or so followers were two of the only women pirates ever to ply the Caribbean waters. One, Anne Bonny, had left her husband to be with Rackham, while the other, Mary Read, had reportedly been sailing for quite some time, disguised as a man. October 1720, a pirate hunting boat overtook Rackham's drunken band. Only Bonny and Read were sober enough to put up any resistance. Though Rackham was executed for the following month, his two female crewmates escaped the hangman's noose because they were both found to be pregnant. Read did die in prison soon after, and nobody knows whatever happened to Bonny. Why are pirates usually pictured with an earring? The theory was that the earring would help with their vision. Then, some believed that the gold would work as a talisman to prevent drowning. And then some said that the gold in the earring was to pay for their final burial. No one knows which one is true, but they did have some interesting beliefs. John Lafitte, 1780 to 1823, was a French pirate and privateer in the Gulf of Mexico in early 19th century. He and his elder brother Pierre spelled their last name with 2 F's and 1 T. But the English language documents of the time use 1 F and 2 T's, Lafitte. The latter has become the common spelling in the United States, including for places named after John Lafitte. Lafitte is believed to have been born either in Basque, France, or the French colony of Santo Domingo. By 1805, he was operating a warehouse in New Orleans, where he was helping to disperse the goods smuggled into town by his brother Pierre. After the United States government passed the Embargo Act of 1807, the Lafittes moved their operations to an island in Barataria Bay, just off the coast of New Orleans. By 1810, their new port was very successful. The Lafittes had pursued a successful smuggling operation, and they had also begun to engage in piracy. Though Lafitte warned the other Baratarians of a possible military attack on their base of operations, an American naval force successfully invaded in September 1814, and they captured most of Lafitte's fleet. Later, in return for legal pardon for his smugglers, Lafitte and his comrades helped General Andrew Jackson defeat New Orleans against the British in the final battle of the War of 1812. The Lafittes became spies for the Spanish during the Mexican War of Independence, and they had moved to Galveston Island, where they developed a pirate colony that they called Campeche. Jean Lafitte had a house near the port of Galveston. Today you can still see the foundation at 1417 Harborside Drive. His house was actually a castle. It was surrounded by a moat, and the top floor was fitted for cannon. When the locals got tired of Lafitte's piracy, probably because he was stealing from them, They requested he leave, probably with guns and knives brandished. Lafitte set fire to his house and he left town. He continued attacking merchant ships as a pirate around Central American ports until he died in 1823 while trying to capture a Spanish vessel. The Flying Dutchman was never a pirate ship. The story goes, back in the 1600s, a ship set sail from Holland bound for India. The captain was recently married, and he looked forward to a return as soon as possible. His wife, wishing to know how her husband was doing, used scrying to view him on the other side of the world. She was caught and tried as a witch. When the captain received word that his new bride was about to be burned at the stake, he turned his ship around and tried to get back to Holland. As he approached the Cape of Good Hope, a storm was raging. Try as he might, the captain couldn't make way around the cape. In a desperate move, he sold his soul to the devil. Now, him and his ship are condemned to sail the seas without ever making port. If you see the Flying Dutchman, it means bad things are coming your way. Usually a horrendous storm, or the ship you're on is going to sink. Whatever you do, never agree to accept a mail sack from the Dutchman. Now, who was the most successful pirate ever? Well, it was no man. It was Madame Cheng. Madame Cheng started her career as a prostitute. She was a shrewd businessman and soon had quite a reputation. In 1805, Cheng Yi was looking for a wife who could also help him run his pirate business. So the two were wed and history was made. The wife would see to all the records and made sure the cash was distributed to the correct recipients. The husband, he gave the orders and he took care of the physical part of the business. Soon, the couple had formed an alliance with hundreds of other pirates. Cheng Yi would assign pirates to work certain areas, and he had them work together to accomplish their goals. After 2 years, Yi died, so his wife simply took over the physical side of things as well. She built the fleet of ships into a vast empire. 1,800 ships with 70,000 men. Yi had an adopted son, Cheng Po Sai. Madame Cheng took him on as a business partner and as her lover. She had a thing for younger men. Along with attacking ships at sea, Madame Cheng would sell protection to coastal towns, just like the mafia here in the States. When the Chinese government began to crack down on piracy, Madame Cheng chose to retire, along with her massed fortune. And she went into the smuggling business instead and began smuggling opium into China. Cheng Po Sai was captured by the Chinese government. Using the business training from his adopted mother, he managed to wrangle a place in the Chinese Navy. Soon Captain Cheng was out chasing down pirates and probably helping his mother avoid arrest. A pirate of near mythical reputation was the dread pirate Roberts. Feared across the 7 seas for his relentlessness and sword-fighting prowess, and is well known for taking no prisoners. Sound familiar? This was from the movie The Princess Bride. It is revealed during the course of the story that Roberts is not one man, but a series of individuals who pass the name and reputation to a chosen successor once they are wealthy enough to retire. When the time comes, Roberts and his chosen successor sail into a port and discharge the crew. Then they hire a new crew, and the ex-Roberts stays aboard as first mate, and referring to his successor as Captain Roberts. Once the crew grows accustomed to the new Roberts, the previous captain leaves to enjoy his retirement. Having read the book The Princess Bride, knowing this particular section of it quite well, I wonder if the writer had chosen Captain Roberts as his reference point, a.k.a. Black Bart. A lot of what Black Bart had done is what the Dread Pirate Roberts would do. Who knows? It was still a good book and an excellent movie. I hope you enjoyed tonight's show. It was an eye-opener for me doing all the research. Tune in next Saturday. We'll be talking about crop circles. So until then, this is Chris James with Strange Things.
Are you coming to the tree where they strung up a man, they say murdered 3? Strange things that happen here, how stranger would it be if we met at midnight in the hanging tree?
I can no longer sit back and allow communist infiltration, communist indoctrination, communist subversion, and the international communist conspiracy to sap and impurify all of our precious bodily fluids.